So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
Hey everyone, Brian Christian here with Father of Glory Global Ministries. I hope you enjoyed the introduction video there. I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking about transmuting memories and basically what is the difference here between claiming it intellectually and embracing it experientially, and why it is important that we don't get stuck in another methodology that has been known. Okay, now there's a lot of different inner healings out there. Good to see you, Sherry. There's a lot of different mind renewal methods out there, and all of them are going to have some positive. Okay, you can benefit from multiple different types of methodology out there. There's frequency healing, where you hold these electrode thingies and they vibrate you and or they have the tuning fork and it can align you, and it can have an effect on the nervous system, but it really can't change the way you perceive. And so even though we are frequency, we also have conclusions upon that frequency. And so getting to a level within you to where you're no longer affected by the elements around you and can use the elements to actually explode into unconditional love, into success in your life, into being knit together in relationships, experiencing that oneness. You can't just mentally transmute your memories. Doesn't work. Why? Because, Christians have been naming it and claiming it for generations, and it hasn't helped them to love one another, has it? It's just turned them into what? Spiritual giants within their egos, in which they now judge everybody that has not obtained their level of spirituality. So we need to have a posture, and we need to understand how the mind works. All right, you've got memory streaming through you at a cellular structure, at a nervous system structure that has the memories of all creation. Okay, why? Because you're one. All right, you're not necessarily conscious of that, and it's not necessarily subconscious memory. Your conscious and subconscious memory in your mind is coming from your view of your life in childhood. The first 7 years is where we learn the program. Even though we have the memory of all creation in us, it is not necessarily cognitive, and it is not necessarily experientially based. And so when we think of this, and this is my perception of it, that basically once you deal with your own memory of your journey from the time you were a child to the time you're an adult, you then begin to tap into the memory within yourselves, which is much of what we would call encountering the cloud of witness, where those memories are manifesting as encounters, as visions, as dreams. It bleeds through all of the ways in which we perceive our life. We have a lot of people that would say, well, I'm an empath, or, everybody's an empath in their true state. All right. Now you have those that are more in touch with emotion than others. And you have those that are, their emotions are frozen in a flight or fight mode that's based in childhood trauma and the way in which they perceive themselves, that makes them hypersensitive to those around them. And of course they justify it in their mind. Well, I'm just a real sensitive empath. No, you're an unhealed person in your mind, that it cannot be around people with frequencies that are in a lower state than you, because it's triggering your lower state frequencies in the flight or fight mode, where you had to constantly be on alert and be in protective mode as a child. So there are many aspects of this, but let's just kind of look at just the intellectual and the experiential for a minute here, okay? Intellectually is everything that I have learned through watching movies, through studying intellectually scriptures, doing word studies, what teachers and preachers are teaching about. But it's not my experience. It's what I have taken intellectually from others and stacked on my mind or put in my mind. It's our dictionary, okay? Just like the Bible, it's your dictionary, okay? So if you're walking through a forest one day and you come across a brown crooked thing on the ground, what's going to happen first? Are you going to stop and go into your dictionary to try to figure out what this brown crooked thing on the ground is? Or are you going to jump back because you've experienced a brown crooked thing before, which would appear to be a snake? So immediately you're going to go, whoa, 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 oh, and then you're going to notice, oh, that's a stick. I thought it was a snake. So what did you experience first when you came across that brown crooked thing? You experienced an emotion that caused you to want to protect yourself, to jump back, until you looked closer and your intellect clicked in and said, oh, that's not us. That's not a snake. That's a stick. It's still under S, so your mind goes to that little library. Now, when it comes to intellect, it takes a moment for your mind to intellectually recall truths that you have stored in your intellectual, information storage place on that part of your mind. But when it comes to experiential knowledge is it flashes faster than you can even comprehend it. This is why when you get triggered by a spouse or by a situation and you freak out, afterwards you think, man, I don't know why I freaked out so bad. The situation really wasn't that bad now that I look back on it. But I flipped out because experientially my mind had been there before. So when you are being triggered, your triggers are not based in your intellectual dictionary information center. They are in your experiential emotional belief center, okay? And so once we understand that memory, your memory is based in your experience of your life, okay? We can get to all the other stuff of having the memory of all creation in ourselves, which really means nothing to us if we have a bunch of wrong perceptions of ourselves emotionally. Because no matter how much you try to go into the depths of this mystical revelation of carrying the memories of all humanity, you're going to view it through your emotional conclusion about yourself historically, and you're going to have a twisted image. And so what we try to do in our humanness and our ego mindset is we try to figure out our life with 1% of reality. How many know that scientifically you're only aware of about 1% of your reality, and you're only actually, your conscious mind is only conscious of about 3.5% of your subconscious mind. But in your subconscious mind is stored all of the emotional beliefs that you believed about yourself that were once conscious, but were repressed and became subconscious. You got to understand here, we think having a conscious and a subconscious is normal. It's actually not normal. Our subconscious was programmed in our first 7 years through trauma, through the wrong perception of ourselves. That subconscious was formed there. Your subconscious, the goal here is to renew your mind so that your subconscious is conscious and you're able to see the panoramic view of everything that's going on within you without limitation, without it being twisted through a lens of conclusion that is not the truth of who you are. And so this is really important that we grasp this. Now, the the way in which we've been taught in this Western culture world, including Christianity, has been to not think a negative thought. Something's going on in my present life. The teachings around me is speak positive things. And I think we've gone through this at multiple levels generationally. We hear the scripture, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so what do? We're not going to admit when we have a negative emotion or a negative belief attached to that emotion. We're going to push it away. We're going to forget what is behind. At least we're going to claim we do. And really what we're going to do is repress what is behind. And we're going to claim out of our dictionary, out of our intellectual knowledge, we are going to claim the truth that my God shall take care of me. I am love. I am perfect. And we think we're transmuting it. And we are. That in that moment, we're transmuting it to a level. At least we think we are. What we're really doing is we're distracting ourselves from the emotional pain that is trying to get our attention so that there can be a level of reconciliation emotionally in that place. So you are not on this side of the spectrum in your visible experience. You are not a human with intellect and emotions. You are an emotional being that thinks. And that is the difference. This is what makes the difference. If you notice the emphasis here. So as long as we're taught to stuff, to distract, to confess truth intellectually without actually facing the pain experientially, we will simply build a new indoctrination, a new religiosity, a new legalism to muzzle the condemnation that's crying out within us. And that condemnation isn't just some thought. It is another version of you in earlier days and years that is crying out saying, I really need understanding. Because here's the thing. Even though we understand our lives as past, present, and future, there is only now. There's only a now place. But because we believe lies about ourselves and we received the program, we have compartmentalized our life into sections of abuse to not have to face it. And so these categorizations of belief has created the illusion of a timeline in which we now view those now present memories, which are conclusions about ourselves, as the past. Okay, so there is no past, there is no future, there is only present. And in that present is memory. But that memory, which is supposed to be an ongoing experience of enlightenment, of spirit, of simply experiencing everything in your life that might even look opposite to bring forth the true version of you, has been planted in events in your life or perceived as events. And in that perception of events, we now have a past conclusion, if that makes any sense. I know this might sound kind of deep, but hey, let's move on here for a minute. Let me read you a scripture here in Romans chapter 12. This is the scripture where it talks about renewing the mind, right? And it says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your spiritual worship or reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. Okay, so this can on the surface look like a lot of work, a lot of performance. I gotta do something to be something. But it's really talking about an atmosphere and a posture that begins the unveiling of this process. It starts out with, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. Okay? Holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service or spiritual worship. And so what we're seeing here in this first verse is that it is not something that happens in a cave as a hermit by yourself, spending hours on your knees trying to transmute memories. It happens in the interaction of life. And the reason why it happens in the interaction of life is because our intellect might have the knowledge that we have this situation where we need to renew our mind, but it has also been programmed by the emotional belief over the years to guard the very pain that the emotional belief has been hiding, and the intellect has learned to guard through pain management, through repression, and through using religion to muzzle our child pleas to be set free historically. Okay, so your intellect will simply put you on a rabbit hunt, a dog chasing its own tail, and will give you intellectual answers, but will not allow you into the emotional pain. Why? Because your emotional belief doesn't believe that your intellect can help you. Why? Because in the beginning of this journey of pain, in your childhood experience where you were unheard, unseen, where as a child you were operating in brainwave called Theta. Now, let me stop here for a second. Okay. So there are different levels of brainwaves. There are lower frequency brainwaves, higher frequency brainwaves. The Theta brainwave, which has been tested through scientific proof with putting the wires and suctioning them onto the head and studying brainwaves, a child's brainwaves up to the age of 7 are different than an adult or after the age of 7. The brain waves begin to change after the age of 7. But before that, the brain works in what's called theta. And that theta brainwave is the same as hypnosis. Like if somebody was being hypnotized, their brain waves would come to theta. It's the place of imagination. It's the place of taking everything imagined as literal. And it's also the place where a child cannot discern what is their responsibility in life and everybody else's. So they take everything on themselves as their responsibility. They take everything literal as an experience of life, and it's fully embraced and believed. So if a child experiences a mom and dad divorcing, that child will blame themselves for the divorce. Okay. Now they might be educated later on that it wasn't their fault intellectually, and that will become a denial that they don't have to face the pain because, I knew I was just a kid. I was a kid. I didn't know what was going on. So I, took it personally. But now looking back, I don't have to take that personally. Now at an intellectual level, I've just justified that emotional pain back there is, it's not painful anymore because I've buried it so deep I can't feel it. But realizing that your emotional pain that is triggered out of your past experience of believing it was your fault that divorce happened, it will always be your fault when a relationship doesn't work out when you're an adult. Now, you won't connect the two because you think that it has to be an exact reflective event for it to make sense, but it doesn't. It just has to be something similar. And so since there is no past, every version of you from childhood all the way up is within your mind trying to converse with you. And some of those parts of you are very upset and wanting some closure. But what we do is we get another doctrine, we claim another scripture, we do another meditation. And here's the thing, if you're applying these things in focusing in on feeling the emotion, it's going to work. If you are claiming these things to escape what you feel, you are building a religion that eventually your emotions will break through. It will be short-lived and there will be no fruit that remains. So the key here is getting fruit that remains. The key here is getting to a place to where you're not having to come back 10 years from now going, I thought I was healed there. How many have done that? Where you had this amazing encounter with God in the present, but you didn't associate it with the pain you were going through in that season that was actually emanating from a belief about yourself over here. And therefore, you just sought God to not feel what you're going through presently, or you went to a meeting, or you got a prophetic word, or you had an encounter, and all of a sudden you're on you're on cloud nine for the next month or even a year. I've heard of it all the way up to a year. I'm just in the glory. I've been freed. And then, but you'll notice that in the seasons where you feel that, there's not a lot of outward confrontation coming. We usually come out of it, the dark night of the soul, for a season to experience the fruit that comes from that. And we begin to say, wow, this is amazing. This is glorious. I'm really excited. I have been set free. But then the season changes, and all of a sudden we're in a hard situation. And guess what? We start feeling the same pain we did. And we're like, but I thought I was healed. Now, what does that do for you intellectually when you experience that over and over again? Well, it reduces your mind's ability to receive anything miraculous or any truth that it will be long lasting. So you're actually building another belief to strengthen the repression, to keep your past belief about yourself repressed, so that you can continue to chase your tail. So the more you claim a truth intellectually without dealing with the truth experientially, will give you a false sense of security that will set you up for another fall, that will increase your belief, your belief in the unbelief of being set free. And it will be a continual building up until finally you just throw in the towel altogether. Okay, and this is really where people end up just saying, you know what, it didn't work for me. None of this worked for me. Now, here's another side to it. You can have the truth of focusing in emotionally and going there, but if you're focusing in on that because of a fear of loss and lack, and therefore that is motivating your need to go there, it will also backfire, because mistaken identity cannot be founded as your deliverer of lies you believe. So it all comes down to what is motivating you to pursue that memory in the first place. This is why Romans 12 comes in, because it's in the brethren, it's with people. Why? Because they're your greatest trigger. It's not in isolation and hidden meditation, in where I'm all by myself. I'm doing great as long as I don't get around certain circumstances, as long as I protect myself from certain environments, I can keep my head above the water. That's not victorious. That's not being an overcomer. That's not rest. That's not stability. That's escapism. That's self-preservation. And so allowing your life to come without you trying to deliver yourself from it, without you trying to convince yourself you don't belong there, without trying to free yourself. Stay in every situation that you cannot control. And I don't mean necessarily physically abusive situations. I mean situations that aren't necessarily harming you physically, but they're targeting belief systems you've been avoiding. Stay in those situations long enough, but you've got to stay in them with all the right people that are in your life that also might be appearing to be part of the problem, to deal with your belief system. And this is known as the mercies of God. So here, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. So in the beginning of this, it feels like a total sacrifice, like you're being obliterated. But this is the dark night of the soul. You're no longer listening to your ego that wants to protect itself and prevent you from stepping prevent you from stepping in to that wholeness. Okay. So when you do that, you come into a place in which you realize that your posture in this manner isn't actually destroying who you are. It's unveiling who you're not. It's removing who you're not. And underneath that is that which is holy, acceptable, and of a good report, right? As we read in the next verse, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. This isn't about what you do. This is about who you are. So you are a revelation of goodness, acceptance, and the perfection in the ability of divinity to carry out that which you've been sent to manifest, that which you have become conscious in. Okay, so another way of doing this is saying no longer focus on the outward, that when you're renewed in your mind, you will no longer become entangled with the visible physical realm or your environment around you as the proof of who you are or who you're not. You will simply use that to pinpoint the lens that is viewing your life wrong and shifting that. You begin to live inward. So you're not going to be focused outward, you're going to be focused inward. And in that inward focus, you become aware of the purpose of why you walk through what you walk through and how that is actually benefiting your life and bringing forth the treasures within, bringing forth legacy, bringing forth relatability, bringing forth compassion, bringing forth the proof of goodness, the proof of faithfulness, the proof of grace, bringing forth the proof of being indestructible divinity. Okay, so all the proofs that your mind needs, that's why you can't claim it. You cannot transmute memory by intellectual confession. You can only transmute memory by embracing the trigger, embracing the pain, but you can only embrace the pain if you realize that that is a belief about myself. It is not who I am. And so the beginning posture of this is realizing I am not my belief, but I need to focus in on this situation outwardly that is mirroring what I believe internally, and only focus on it externally long enough to go inward and feel that emotional belief. And in that emotional belief that I'm feeling, I can now do what? I can now see my childhood situation that is really where my present pain is coming from, that my present situation is targeting, so that I can feel it here, see it here, and say, no, Father, what's the truth how do you see me in this place where I believe the lie, that I'm alone, that nobody cares? Now, again, maybe nobody did care around you, but your environment does not dictate who you are. But as a child in the Theta brainwaves, we were hypnotized by everything around us and we accepted it as our identity. But when we did that, we didn't just miss the mark with no reward. What germinates within that is the unveiling of the eternal purpose of the Father and the theme you were sent to carry once it all flips over and is transmuted. You'll find that when the Father calls you, when you're called and you get your mandate, that maybe you're called to be a communicator, somebody that can fluently speak out life situations, or somebody that is called to bring people into a place of rest. Well, guess what you're going to walk through in order to bring that about? You're going to walk through restlessness. You're going to walk through the inability to speak clearly. You might even be like Moses with a stutter. That was me. As a child, I was fine, but as I started to get older, in my from the age of about 8 to 15, I got into a lot of drugs. I took a lot of LSD, and I'm not just saying a few hits. I'm saying I ate 100 hits of LSD. Didn't come down for a year and a half, and in that time, when I did come down, I came out with a stutter. Okay, so I talk like this. Didn't know my name. Didn't know any of that. Had to relearn some things. But in the midst of that, when I was awakened at 16 and a half years of age, even though I was awakened partially, I wasn't walking in what I'm walking in now, but it was the beginning of my journey. My stutter was removed instantly, and I could speak fluently, and I was quoting scriptures before I ever read them. I was breaking open what was hidden within me eternally, of the truth. As 1 John 2:20 says, you have an unction from the Holy One and you know all things. So the knowing began to come forth, but it was also a foretaste of what I would eventually be fully established in consciously in my life. And so that that was the beginning of my journey, in which the Father said, son, I've called you to be a unifier of many. I've called you to restore marriages, and I've called you to be a father of many. So for the next, 20 years, everywhere I went, I was accused of dividing. I went through several bad relationships. I had a daughter die in my arms. I had my exes take my kids from me. I had one son taken by CPS. I went through all of these things in my early years. Okay. So guess what I believed about myself? I'm a worthless father. I'm a terrible husband. And nobody wants me around because I can't bring unity anywhere. Now, what was going on was all of those things happening outwardly was coming out of the emotional belief that was moving behind the scenes of my intellectual proclamation to be the father, to be the unifier. So I had the intellectual side of I am these things, but I was driven by my need to prove myself emotionally, where I didn't believe I was these things, because in my childhood, my dad wanted to kill me in my mother's womb, attempted to. And I'm told this, so I believed the lie by osmosis. I don't remember what's going on in the womb intellectually or even emotionally, but I'm told it. So I believe a lie by osmosis. You can be told a lie. All you have to do is believe you're worthless. A parent says you're worthless, you're never going to amount to anything, even though you've never been proven you're worthless. You're going to believe it. And when you believe it, you're going to now project through that. And so my childhood memories of watching the display of abuse with my parents taught me how to not treat a woman, how to not have a good relationship. My separation from my siblings, because they were a lot older. I had 3 older siblings, 7 years, 8 years, and 9 years older than me. I was the youngest. And before my stepdad came along, and then my mom had two more boys. It's my half brothers. So then I went from being the youngest to the middle kid, 2 of the worst places to be in a dysfunctional family. So I went from not having any acknowledgement at all as a middle child, and as a last born, not being able to connect with the rest of my siblings, being the youngest. And so with that separation and gap with my siblings, I had no connection. So my experience of my siblings was abandonment. I'm not as good as they are. I'm not worth being loved. You see, so we pick up these mindsets. First, we start out emotionally feeling them, that something's off. And as time goes on and we begin to develop language and our cognitive side of our mind begins to engage, we now begin to define those things. Why? Because they're constantly being triggered. And now that they're constantly being triggered, I am now cognitive enough to say, well, I don't want to feel that, but I don't know how to get out of it. So now, because I don't know how to get out of it, not only do I have these lies I believed about myself, but now I'm powerless to do anything with it. So now I'm going to add the lie of powerless on there. So now not only am I stupid, but I'm weak. And now that I am stupid and weak, I'm going to grow up in that stupid and weak belief. Now, eventually I'm going to come into contact with religion. And now religion is going to tell me that I am a worthless sinner. And because I'm already acquainted with believing that at a level, I'm going to hear it. And I'm going to go, wow, well, at least I'm included here. At least I'm included here, because they're a bunch of worthless sinners like me. So I'm going to embrace that as the truth, because I believe the truth that I'm a worthless sinner based on how I was treated as a child. Okay. So now I'm going to put on all these doctrines, because even though I'm a worthless sinner, I'm also told that I can be an overcomer as long as I believe I'm a worthless sinner. Makes no sense, does it? Because people that are told they are worthless will never believe they can overcome anything. So it's almost like it's very similar to satanic ritual abuse. If you've ever worked with survivors of ritual abuse, they are programmed as children. So the occult, and when I say satanic, I don't necessarily mean Satanists, because it can be done through multiple types of cultic ritual abuse, where they will implant lies in kids with protections over it, that the moment you try to get through to that as an adult, it begins to splinter and disassociate the whole mind. So it's purposeful disassociation through torture, hooking children up to electrodes, and telling them to cry out to God. And every time they cry out, they get electrocuted. Then lies would be spoken over them, brainwashing over and over again through screens and imagery and torture. And then there would be, it would stop. They'd let it stop if there'd be a confession of breaking, of some safety net word that they would use that would also have subliminal language within that. So if they're being electrocuted and they're going, call upon God to deliver you, and they call upon God to deliver them, and it turns up the electricity, they're not going to call on God to deliver them, because it gets worse. Okay. So it's going to implant lies upon lies, so that if you try to get out, another lie breaks out that you were brainwashed into believing, that creates another physical sensation in your body that makes you feel like you have a sickness and disease. So different methods of torture on different parts of the body, specifically the genitals, in which electrodes would be put on the genitals, and they would then be told that if they ever believe they amount to something, or if they ever believe they're good enough to be loved, and do you believe you're good enough to be loved? Do you believe your mommy loves you? Yes, I do. Over and over again. Now, do you believe? No, she doesn't. Then there would be a reprieve. There'd be a level of pleasure and peace through the denials. And so it's really purposeful twisting of the mind, so that when that person becomes an adult and they go in to try to heal their minds, there's all these guards and protections that just send the counselor or the coach on rabbit trails that just begins to break their mind even more. Very similar. So I have my own verbiage. It's called CRA, which is Christian ritual abuse. And it's where you're taught that you're a sinner, that you're worthless, that you're a wretch. And all that is doing is confirming the childhood trauma, solidifying you to continue in emotional repression, dysfunction, so that the focus is on your intellect performing to measure up. Now, what's crazy is your ego will mask your emotions. It will create, your brain will create chemicals to give you a high and a sense of calm that is not necessarily true at the base level of what you believe subconsciously, kind of like sex addiction. People that are addicted to sex, whether it be through childhood sexual abuse or through pornography or through escapism out of emotional pain, that was their way of escape, it creates the same euphoric feeling as heroin. So it's a way in which we can escape the pain temporarily and have a euphoric feeling. So in order to keep that temporary feeling going, then we become addicted to sex or addicted to masturbation or addicted to porn. And so it's our way of escaping the stress and all of these things. Okay. So sex isn't bad, obviously. But the moment we use it to escape our pain, anything we use to escape our pain is something that is not going to help us in the end. It's just going to block us from entering into the fullness of who we truly are. Okay, so I've got to come to the place that my present situation is actually aiding me to restore my mind. So all the trials that we walk through right in the midst of everything that we're going forward in, and now it looks like an interruption. It's trying to prevent me from my destiny. This is terrible. All the things we say and do when we throw our fits in that, isn't you presently speaking against your present situation? Cognitively, that might be what you think. But really what it is it's all the things your mind has been believing about you way back here that are being extracted through the present situation to begin to deal with the way in which you have perceived yourself emotionally in the past. So your intellect cannot cross over to your experience, but you can use your intellect long enough to feel your emotion and follow the stream of that emotion to your experience and transmute it through that place, not by intellectual confession, even though what you knew intellectually might come into your mind to be placed in that experiential knowledge. And that's fine as long as you're willing to embrace it, to feel it. Okay. Let me give you another scripture here in 2 Corinthians 10. I can't cover, this is a deep subject, so I'm just giving you just the basics on this one. 2 Corinthians 10, we see, says in verse 1, "Now I, Paul, myself beseech you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who in presence am base amongst you, but being absent am bold towards you. But I beseech you that I may not be bold when I am present with that confidence wherein I think to be bold against some, which think of us as if we walked according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. Do not look on things after the outward appearance." Okay, now, if you read the whole chapter, this is all about how we are judging outwardly our life, other people, competing, comparing ourselves amongst ourselves. He says, hey, look, you might think I look like a little pipsqueak in the physical, even though my letters are weighty here, and you have a false expectation of me by my physical appearance, but you've been doing this with everybody around you. So when you look at this chapter, it isn't talking about spiritual warfare against demons. Nowhere is demons mentioned here. In fact, your spiritual warfare against demons is recognized as carnal warfare. The weapons of my warfare that are carnal is me avoiding my pain and taking my lie-based belief and projecting it as a demonic entity and going after that rather than facing myself. That's what you call carnal warfare, okay? But since we don't have carnal warfare, but is mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, we have to recognize sovereignty that is happening in the present situation that you don't believe you created, even though it's all coming from your mind. Everything you're experiencing externally is coming from the conscious and the subconscious mind. The goal here is to flip over the parts of your mind that are not true about you and cause the subconscious to come into the conscious, in which you now are manifesting and projecting outwardly creation, the world that is known as the earth. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. His glory is in all the earth. The meek shall inherit the earth. So nothing wrong with the earth. That's the spiritual mind, perceiving its life and living it outwardly by the embrace of the inward. But a carnal mind, the earthly wisdom is demonic. In the world, you're going to have tribulation. Do not be entangled with the cares of this world. Do not love the things in this world. That is dealing with the outward world being that which is constantly tempting you to escape or rejecting you to conform or trying to crush you to give up. That is actually outwardly, again, coming from the inward belief about yourself. So you're using the outward to deal with the inward. You're not running from the outward. You're not praying against the outward. You're not decreeing that something changes so you can now go do the thing that's on your heart. Everything that's happening is preparing you to do all the things on your heart. You don't need to control anything. Now, when you don't need to control anything and you reach that phase where you're okay with not changing anything in your life because your mind has been renewed at the deeper subconscious levels, that is when you're entrusted with decrees. And those decrees are really about changing other people's lives, because you no longer need to change yours. And when their life gets changed, your life is changed. Why? Because you're seeking first the kingdom and everything's being added to you. Nowhere do you see Jesus ever trying to change anything around him. He knows that everything is fulfilling that which is written concerning him. All right. But what you do see is him helping, as his mind is renewed, he is shifting the reality of others by his decrees, by his actions, by his mighty deeds in the spirit. Okay. So it's not that we sit passively and just let everything happen, but we've come to grips that nothing is a threat to us. And in the fact that nothing is a threat, I can now utilize what I'm experiencing externally to transmute what needs to be transmuted internally. And now I become what? A conduit of the inward kingdom that I now behold, to manifest it outwardly to others, in which they experience the kingdom coming suddenly upon them. Remember, we have the three scriptures that Jesus talks about. He says the kingdom is within you, the kingdom is upon you, and the kingdom is at hand. This is something you partner with one another in inheritance, divine reflection. It is a hand-in-hand journey at one level. It is that which is coming outward to confront the inward, as well as the inward now projecting outward to reveal to everyone else the freedom, as well as to our cognitive mind that might not have gotten the emotional belief of that restoration yet, which we'll talk about that in a second. And so you have that which is beside you, that which is upon you, and that which is within you. So we're not negating the external realm, even though it is an illusion in the sense of it being your ultimate reality. The only illusion in the external is the projections out of you of the lies you believed about yourself that are emanating externally within the within the landscape of your life interpretation. Okay, so this is actually really simple here. Very simple, good stuff here. So in order to pull down the strongholds of my mind and cast down imaginations, I have to take my thoughts captive. Now, when we read this verse in 2 Corinthians 10, specifically verse 4 and 5, when we think of weapons, we tend to think of violent fighting. So we have to let go of our stereotype labels here, and we have to come into the place of first understanding that everything is happening is coming through God, and that it's mighty through God. And so it is something that we're not doing in our own effort or ability to measure up. This is why you can take a methodology out of the wrong intention and out of your own subconscious belief to manage the pain, and you can get deeper into repression. And this is why some of these methods don't work, is because we're doing it for all the wrong reasons. We're trying to escape something as though it's a threat to us. So the posture here is, brethren, according to the mercies of God. So realizing this is all mercy, we can now present ourselves. And we can realize that everybody and everything is our teacher and is there to aid us and help us step into this, okay? And so in order to deal with understanding that our warfare and that which is mighty and the pulling down and the casting down is not a violent act, it is an act of embracing. Because this is where we see bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. And what thoughts are we bringing in captive? Is that which exalts itself above the knowledge of God. So the knowledge of God is that which is declared of you, that you are righteous, you are holy, you are perfect, you are complete, You are love. You are generosity. You are prosperity. You are mercy. See, all the things we are has been reduced to things we do. And as long as they're reduced to things we do, we have all this junk in our mind, and we're looking at our lives through a lens of not being good enough. So everything becomes outside of us, separated from us, and now we're tempted to pursue it, to measure up, to obtain it, to be better than we were before. But in reality, when you deal with the mind in this posture of embracing the pain, not from a place of rejecting yourself, but realizing that that pain is another version of you that has something to say, and you haven't been listening there because you haven't been respecting yourself enough to love yourself enough to face yourself and to reconcile the versions of yourself that are crying out within you. See, we're surrounded with a cloud of witnesses, and there's multiple levels of that. One of it is all the saints that have gone before us, which are really present. Then there's every version of yourself within that cloud on a multiverse level in which you're not even human, but in other forms that are all happening outside of time and space. And then you have the other versions of you in your timeline view of yourself that also needs to be confirmed. And so there are multiple levels of this. I know I'm probably making some of your heads spin here. But in order to cast down, so it's not about throwing yourself away, it's about embracing yourself, feeling the emotional pain long enough to understand the lie you believed about yourself emotionally. Because you have an intellectual lie you believed, or what you think it is. And then you have your experiential belief of, through the eyes of your childhood, what you actually believe. So you have these two perspectives that are constantly going on in this embrace. You have you as in the present looking back to you as a child, and you're going to perceive a certain level of, well, yeah, my mom yelled at me. Yeah, my dad was always working. He was never around. But, hey, we needed the money. He had to support us. So we have all these justifications when we look back because we've built them over the years intellectually. We fooled ourselves. And then we have the lie, well, I don't want to disrespect my parents. It's good now. We have a good relationship now. And that's fine in your adulthood. You don't have to confront your parents. It's not disrespectful. But when you go back to you as a child, and you feel it there, you see it completely different. You're alone. Nobody cares. I'm no good. I'm stupid. That still remains the same no matter how much intellectually you look back. And you go, well, I understand it now, because your intellect does not carry the emotional pain. Now, your intellect has learned to protect that emotional pain over the years to survive. And so your intellect is going to protect it by lessening it, by making it look like, well, other people had worse situations than me. I don't want to sit here and dwell on these things. I don't want to draw attention to myself. All of those are cop-outs of self-disrespect and denial of what we really believe, okay? So we need to let go of that. And we also need to recognize that when those denials come up, it's evidence we're in a current trigger. Or when we all of a sudden go from feeling emotion to numbing out, we also are realizing that we're guarding the trigger, usually with a defender lie of anger, denial, and some self-justification. So I might have to do a part 2 on this. So we really need to be aware of the fact that you cannot transmute your memories by simply seeing your memory from an intellectual place and making a declaration over it. That's just too easy. And guess what? Your mind was programmed to believe you can do that. Getting to the root of it is to listen to what your mind wants to say and say, well, how does it feel to make all these proclamations over my mind, to feel good for a while, but just to trick myself, just to realize I'm back at square one? What does that feel like to think about that? Well, now I'm to probably one of the big lies that keep me going around in circles. So it's all in the way you ask the questions. Ask yourself questions. Well, what does it feel like to not be able to control this situation? What does it feel like that I'm going to claim the truth? I'm going to feel good for a while just to return to my vomit. What does that feel like? Okay, now what you're doing is you're stirring it up. Take advantage of the ability to stir up your pain. Don't be threatened by your pain. You are not your pain. Your pain has believed you are those things, and that's why it's painful. So the key here is transmuting it at an emotional level, feeling it. And now, Father, can you take me to the first time I believe this about myself? Now, you'll probably find yourself in secondary memories to stir it up more, to kind of open that specific stream of belief, to give you more points in the theme that are going to help you to understand truth at a deeper level. And then you're going to find yourself in that memory back here where you're by yourself. You feel like nobody cares. Nobody's around. I'm not good enough. I can't do anything right. Feel that. Relive that. You've been living it the whole time at a subconscious level. You might as well relive it consciously so that truth can become conscious, because you're pulling your subconscious belief into your consciousness. You're feeling it, reliving it, and now you're allowing truth that you might even have intellectually to come of its own accord without you claiming it, without you premeditating upon it. In fact, you don't even have to try to find the memory back here in the present situation. Your mind will recall what is being targeted. And so next thing you know, the truth comes in. You were never alone. I was with you. There was a purpose you walked through this. Your parents were wounded. They were abandoned as children. Compassion begins to open up. You begin to experience the truth of who you truly are and the purpose of why you walk through this. Forgiveness begins to come. Instant forgiveness. You're able to release debts because now at that level, you know who you are. Okay? And when that happens, you come back to your present situation and you feel that again. You'd say, oh man, this present situation I've been in, you know, the one that triggered you in the first place, you feel it. And you try to make yourself feel all the pain you just felt. You ain't going to be able to feel it. These memories are clear. Now you could have branches where you could have 3 childhood memories that were separate that are emanating into one stream and manifesting in one event. So you might all of a sudden go, well, I don't feel alone anymore, but I still feel powerless. Now, Father, take me back there. So it can branch out, but I tell you what, it isn't going to take more than an hour to do this, that you go in there, you come back to your present situation, and guess what? You're like, no, I don't believe that about myself at all no more in the present situation. You go about your day. Guess what's going to happen? 2 things are going to happen after you've gone in and transmuted your emotional pain. Okay? You're going to most likely have a divine repeat. Why? You're going to have a situation come back around to look like it didn't work. Why? Because you're never going to know if it actually worked until that happens. You've got to dummy test it. You're going to dummy test a car you drive, you know, because if you ever get in a wreck and you have kids, you want your family to survive a wreck. So you're going to check out the reviews on vehicles that you're going to drive on the road. You want it dummy tested, right? So now dummy test your mind. You don't have to try to do it. It'll come of its own accord. So now another situation arises where you should be feeling that guilt, feeling worthless. And all of a sudden you're like, what? And your intellect is saying, you should be freaking out. You should be protecting yourself. You should be doing this. But there's no emotional pain. Why is this necessary? Because my intellect over the years only has the recording of how I emotionally believed before. So even though I went in and transmuted that, and I've seen it to a level intellectually, my intellect still has the old hard drive view of the old trigger emotional reactions. So I need a repeat for my intellect to now reformat its hard drive and line up with the new stream of peaceful, restful emotion that's been transmuted. So now my intellectual belief begins to catch up with my experiential belief. And now guess what happens? The event that was being used to trigger me in that season is no longer necessary. So it goes away. It's gone. You don't need it anymore. How many circumstances are in your life because either the people in your life are projecting their pain and they need the circumstance and you're walking through it with them because you're either in the same place or you're no longer triggered, so you don't need your situation to change. How many times are we walking through these situations, and all they are is they are helpers. They are deliverers to deal with the lies that we believed about ourselves subconsciously that we're not even aware of because we pushed them down so deep and claimed truth intellectually on top of it that we don't even know they're there. That's why we can't feel the pain. I've done sessions with people that are like, well, I kind of feel a little bit of emotional pain here that I'm not good enough, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's not really distracting from me. And we'll start out there. By the time we get to the base place, they are in so much pain, they did not realize how much that dominated their life. Well, how come it was just a little bit of pain and not a lot? Because it was being drowned out by the la, 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 la noise of I'm good, I'm perfect, I'm complete, I'm not lacking anything, I'm transmuting. No, you're not transmuting anything. You're fooling yourself because your intellect cannot cross over to your emotional belief. Those are two separate belief systems. It's almost like the rich man and Lazarus. Okay. My emotional belief is the rich man in hell wanting his tongue to be, cooled by a drop of water. And then there's Lazarus, in the bosom of the Father. Okay. So you can have your intellectual belief of being in heaven, but emotionally you're walking through hell. So we need to be able to posture correctly in this. And so your outward situation will change. I remember when everywhere I went, I had pastors rejecting me, coming against me. I was living in Sacramento, California. I was doing these glory meetings, and people were getting touched and healed and power of God. Now, during this time, there wasn't a lot of that moving in the city. And this is before Bethel. This is before Bethel in Redding with Bill Johnson. They were still in their religion. I'm moving in glory realms. And I still have my religiosity. I'm still in duality. I'm still believing things I don't believe anymore. But I was still moving in glory. There was still a lot of manifestations. So people were coming from all these different churches to my meetings. Well, the pastors found out, So they didn't like me because they tried to get me to submit to them, and I wouldn't do it. I'd come in and I'd try the whole submit to authority, sit on the pew, carry the pastor's Bible and water so you're worthy enough to pray over the offering. I would sit and try to do that, but I'm sorry, I was a rebel. I would get too on fire and the power of God would come out of me in a meeting there, and people would start dropping like flies around me, and then I'd be reprimanded by the pastor. Always ended up at these churches where they were deacon possessed churches where the deacons were always in control of everything, telling you to sit down, be quiet. I'd even come to churches where they had an open mic that anybody could use it. I'd come in there and sit down. As soon as the pastor saw me come in, he'd grab the mic and put it next to him. I was the only one not allowed to participate in any church I went to, because had I participated, they would have got set free from religion. But religion was like, no. We love our religiosity in our program. They were very jealous of me, and they were very fearful of me. Now, they had a good reason to be afraid, because I also had a track record of all this devastation behind me and relationships not lasting very long, because I would push them away the moment they triggered me, because that was this aspect of religion I still had. I was protecting the lies I had believed. So every time the glory in these gatherings would start to break loose to where it looked like it was about to go national, international, those pastors would start telling the people that were going there, this guy's not of God, he's a false prophet. Let me show you this, and this in his life. And they'd all run from me. Everybody would desert me, and I'd be by myself. And I would be so angry at these pastors. I wanted to go and burn their buildings down, to be perfectly honest. So I'd pray the Psalms that David prayed, let their children be fatherless, and let their wives be widows, and let the angel of the Lord chase them. And, I would pray the prayers of David, right? Because we think that's inspired of God to pray, when it was really just David throwing a fit in his own trigger-based mind. Okay. And so I would do all the religious charismania stuff that I was taught. Nothing would work. All those pastors, their congregations would grow. All the friends I had would go fellowship with my enemies. And I'd be sitting there devastated and desolate. and it would look like God was for them and against me. Now, what was really going on was God was after the lies I had believed. Okay, were they right in what they did? No, but it really wasn't about that. Because even though they were projecting their own insecurities, God was using their rejection to reject my rejection about me. And it was the outward belief about myself coming back at me. Why? Because I expected to be rejected. Because I was taught that if you're prophetic, you're going to be rejected. If you're an apostle, you're going to be the filth of the world. So I was taught to posture myself to expect the opposite of what the Father has actually been speaking, which is you're loved. When it says the world's going to hate you, it's talking about the subconscious parts of your own belief system that are self-hatred, that are projecting outwardly, drawing people outwardly to come and be used of the Father to reject your rejection, to hate your self-hatred. When I got healed of that rejection, guess what happened? All of the outward rejection went away. I started getting favor. Now, do I still have people that come against me? Sure, but it doesn't bother me, and it's not a regular thing with the majority like it was back in the day where I thought I was Elijah. I'm the only one left. Everybody else is gone. And I think we go through these phases for a reason so that we can have compassion on those that are in it. So there is not one thing in vain in your life in this journey. You were in it because people did things to you. You learned a program. But before you were sent, before you manifested and became conscious in your mankind experience, you also were sent as Jesus was sent. And you were sent to a generation to affect that generation. And you were sent through a process to relate to that generation to affect that generation. And you were sent through all these opposites so that you would have a testimony of the proof of grace to the generation that would now see your testimony and wake up to their own in that generation. So there isn't one thing that is out of alignment with everything you've walked through. And even the truth that I'm speaking today is a truth that is coming to you at the appointed time for Christ to be revealed in you and in your history, which is really a now memory, but is seen as a timeline journey back here, that the moment you get set free from that, the mind is no longer stretched behind you and distracted in a timeline view of yourself, and you redeem the time. And now those past conclusions and lies are transmuted into truth, which now becomes a present experience of grace and a proof of authority and dominion and goodness and faithfulness, and a proof of divinity, a proof of power that now is ever present, in which your mind is no longer distracted by a past mentality and can live in a now embrace. And this is where we end up, in that now embrace. So I hope this word today has helped you. I hope that it has given you some things to think about. And if I sum this up into just some basic keys, it is, number one, use the present situation to discern what your subconscious emotional belief is ready to receive. The present situation. You'll know because you can no longer push down the pain, and the emotional belief can no longer believe the lie that it can manage its own pain. So because you're just getting emotional and there's a present situation, that's how you know where you're ready to deal with those parts of your mind. Embrace it. Use the situation in front of you long enough to feel the emotional pain, and then become neutral, pulling away from the intellect and from the conclusion of the situation, but stirring it up in your mind to feel the emotional pain and what it is you believe about yourself in that emotional pain. Okay, what is the lie you've believed about yourself? So the reason why you're becoming neutral is because you want to make sure that you do not target the present situation as your scapegoat, which now prevents you from using the present situation to go into your history. After you have used the present situation, you will drift. You will feel it. You will stay in it, focusing on emotional pain and the belief about myself. And then number two, you're gonna drift. You're gonna let your mind bring memory to the surface. You're not going to try to find a memory. And so you're going to let memory come up, And when the memory comes up, you're going to feel it. If for some reason it's blocked, you're going to deal with number 3, defender lies. Defender lie is basically what you've used to protect yourself or to survive through that emotional pain. It's usually frustration, anger. If I feel powerless back here and I've learned to use anger to make me feel like I'm powerful, that anger is going to have to be dealt with before you can get to the powerless belief. So what does it feel like if I don't have the right to be angry? Well, I feel powerless. All right, now, Father, if I let go of my right to be angry, am I going to be powerless in this memory? No. All right, now I have the ability to let go of it. You can try to do it on your own. Your mind won't let you. You need a truth to come in, almost as a third-party truth to your mind, in order to convince your emotional belief to let go of the defender lie. And as that place where we let go of that defender lie, no, I'll be fine. The anger goes. All of a sudden I see here where I'm alone, and the deeper understanding of being powerless is present. I'm alone. I'm not good enough. I'm weak. Now, Father, what's the truth here where I believe I'm weak, where I believe I'm powerless? I was there with you. Look, you did make it out. That's a metamorphic lie. It was once true, but it's no longer true. But my mind is stuck as though I'm still in that place. I didn't escape. You did make it out. You're fine now. You're okay now. It doesn't take a lot of truth to come into that place, and all of a sudden we're released from it. Okay? And so, 1, use the present situation to identify your emotions. 2, drifting, let memory come up. 3, deal with any denials or defender lies that were your coping mechanisms to repress your pain. 4, you want to identify the lie you believed about yourself emotionally. 5, transmute it with allowing the Father to bring in truth. These are the 5 things that you do. I've just described to you what we believe we are, what we believe about intellectually, and how we can't claim it, but we can embrace our pain emotionally. And as that's dealt with, your intellect and your emotions will reconcile, and your new emotional belief will now be able to be articulated in a now expression outside of time and space, in which you can now, through your intellect, articulate mysteries and revelations that carry the atmosphere and the frequency of the emotional life you carry, which is no longer emotion like it was, but is spiritual motion emanating through a renewed mind. So you are spiritual motion as a frequency slowed down to express itself in emotion and imagery, okay, that walks through a process of contradictions, lies, and programming that comes to an appointed time of transmuting and transfiguring, that now adds all of those up into not just spiritual motion on this side, but spiritual motion in motion as expression, as vibration, as explosion, as impression. And it is God, the exceeding greatness of God toward us who believe. That's God exceeding himself through you by the process of loss and gain, time and redeeming the time, past into the now, distraction to attraction. All of these things are working on your behalf. So that's it for me. You guys are amazing. Appreciate you sitting in here with me and being a part of today's broadcast. We give a few announcements here. We have the Fam Bam Communion Reunion coming up October 21st through the 23rd. The first gathering starts Friday morning at 11 a.m. Many are coming from multiple states, many ministries, people that have been in oneness and inclusion since the 70s of the original Sons of God movement. The past move is coming into the present. There is a unification coming, and we are expecting to have quite a crowd. We have people that are going to be camping out in tents. We have a few rooms that were open. I'm not sure if those are full or not. We do have an event page, so look for it on my Facebook. Whether you have Facebook or not, and you're watching this on YouTube, you can go to my website, and on the front of the page, you can click the Facebook event and still go on there and find out about it. Make sure you register on there that you're going. Pay the $100 if you're single, $150 if you're married, and kids under 12 eat for free. Kids over 12, if you have kids, it's $50 a piece. This helps take care of the food for 9 meals, 3 solid days. We will have people cooking, and we'll have people taking care of you. We will have some big tents set up outside in which we will be gathering, and we will have plenty of space inside to eat as well as outside. It's going to be amazing. Some people are getting Airbnbs because they don't want to camp out because maybe they're older or it's just not their thing. So you can ask people that have already registered on there. You can comment on there. Anybody on here got any extra space to camp at, to, you know, an extra room? People are looking for joining together financially so they don't have to pay for hotel rooms. There are hotels available as well. But you want to come out for this event. This event is historical. It is going to begin to bring this movement mainstream. It is also going to break the cycles of past moves persecuting the next thing that's being emphasized. There's going to be a lot going on through that, okay? And so it's going to be amazing. Oz3, I see you asked a question, is reincarnation true? Not only human Earth. That's another subject in and of itself that I'd like to go into detail on at some time. I don't believe the reincarnation we've been taught is the truth because it's been based in going and coming, in individuality, and is based in time and space, of which is not reality. So I don't believe the way it's been taught is true, but I do believe the incarnation is true in a now place that has created consciousness as the many as one, and that consciousness is not individual. It is plural, as the many as one, but that plurality is still one mind that is projecting out and never stops projecting, and that our incarnation is constantly being cycled through that anomaly, if I could put it to you that way. And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's what I'll give you for now. But yes, come to the Fam Bam. We are not traveling this year, guys. We are not going around state to state. So I know normally everybody had the opportunity. We could come to your hometown. We could put on these gatherings and the glory. And man, there's just a lot of transformation. I mean, phenomenal gatherings we've had around the nation where it has created pockets of community all over. We're not doing it this year. This is our only gathering that's a big one here where people are coming from all over. So please, we've come to you for 5 years across the nation. Please come to us. You know, please come and meet us here. We would really enjoy having you and being with you. We need each other. We need you guys. We need to come together. I know I do. I know I need you guys. And, you know, we have a wonderful family locally here, just a handful of us that we get together 3 times a week and hang out, and sometimes daily. But we need you. And, you know, this event is not just another gathering. This was very prophetically inspired for the timing of the mainstream coming into this. Just imagine what's going to begin to happen. Walking into a Lutheran church, a Baptist church, a Catholic church, a Pentecostal church, a Mormon church, a Jehovah's Witness church, a New Age church, you know, all the different ones. You're going to walk in there and you're going to be hearing the same exact message that I'm talking about. You're going to be hearing what Kay Fairchild ministers and Don Keithley ministers and Alec Martin ministers and, you know, all the different wonderful generals that are being raised up right now and that are launching out with these revelations. Okay. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. And we're on the brink of it. Now, the key here is keeping it as community when it goes mainstream and not letting it fall prey to more religiosity. Okay. We're not building a corporation here. This is a living organism of life. Okay. And so that's how we want to keep it. So let's get together. All right. Come and pitch a tent. All right. It's going to be nice. Bugs will be gone. Humidity will be gone. It'll be nice weather. We won't need air conditioning. Okay. It's going to be beautiful over here. And it's 3 solid days. We've also added some midday activations. So we're going to be having Rick and Sheila Watts ministering, my wife and I ministering. We're going to be having other people speaking as well. We're going to be, everybody's going to can share, and we're going to be having some tremendous worship, and we're going to be having Jackie Myers and Lynn Joyful ministering, and we're going to be having Grace Sapphire doing an activation Saturday mid-afternoon in between the morning and the evening for about an hour. And she's going to help usher people into the Ancient of Days and into eternity, where you are going to encounter it and embody it. We're also going to have on Sunday, in between the morning and the evening, gathering Jody Burns, who's going to be coming with the revelation of releasing provision and finance and how to break open the realm of provision as well. And it's all going to be on how to activate, how to step in, how to put on, how to come through. We're going to untangle the mess of religion, and we're going to bring restoration. We're going to restore all things in this gathering. We're going to flip it over in this gathering. So don't miss out. October 21st to the 23rd. I will again post on my Facebook page today the event. I'll try to post it in the comments as well, but you can find it on Facebook. You can find it on my website. So go and check it out and join in with us. Amen. We are also finishing up on the masterclass for the shift training, the new training, which I'm very pleased with, that comes with a workbook. And I don't know how many hours it is. It's 9 sessions at an hour and a half, sometimes up to 2 hours on each session. So we're talking anywhere from, 15 to 20 hours worth of awesome information on how to fully go into the mind, how this process works, the shift process. Shift means sanctify historical illusions and finding truth. And I'm getting ready to start on my book on that subject. So we will have the training out soon. We will have, that will be on a platform for download. We will have the training manual and the workbook and the actual book. The actual book's going to take me a little bit more time, but we're going to start getting this stuff out to you guys. It'll be available for a decent price. It isn't going to be overpriced, but the cost that it is, we're putting a lot into this. We're using platforms that we have to pay for this, but also this is going to help us to finance what we're doing in the spirit. We need your guys' help, and we appreciate all that you guys have been doing for us. We raised about $2,500 a few weeks ago to help with us with costs. Since we parked, 2/3 of our income, 2/3 of our ability to keep going has been diminished because we're not traveling. So we're having to find a way to park for this length of time and maintain. Thankfully, the land we're on is not charging us rent, but we are having to pay electricity. We just finally started dealing with our AT&T phones, which were set up for travel. We paid about $227 a month for 3 phones so that we can continue to bring these truths to you while on the road. We needed high-speed internet. We needed Verizon as well as AT&T. We needed hotspot, and we were very limited with some of the cheaper phones. So we had to use top-notch to bring you top-notch videos, and be able to travel to remote places where internet wasn't very good and be able to go live and do all the things that we do. So we needed that internet, but once parked, we didn't want to pay that high cost. So we called up AT&T and said, can we reduce everything down to the minimum? They said, sure. And then they messed it all up for the last 2 months. We're charging us $600. I refused to pay it. Removed our international calling, and we were doing international calls. And so finally we got it situated at $135 a month so that we could add unlimited wired internet for $117 and offset the cost so that we're not going over our budget. So we've been doing everything we can to live as minimal as we can so that we can continue to do what we're sent to do while we're local. But we've incurred some bills with the setup here and with electricity here and some other aspects and coming online and the things we're about to do. So we still need your guys' help. We're still about $2,500 short on being able to reduce some of the debts we've incurred since we parked. We went from $3,000 a month to $400 a month right off the bat. Okay. And so if you want to help us, there is a link that I believe is on this recording above. You can go to our website at foggm.org. And you can sow that way. You can also sow through Facebook Messenger on my main Facebook. That's the one with the picture of my wife and I. I don't do it through the other messenger. I don't even use that messenger. So I use it on my main one with the animated picture of my wife and I as the profile pic. So please send us an offering today. Make a donation. This is going to help us continue. We are revving up to plan on doing a lot more online stuff and actually picking regular times to be on here as we begin to start our heavy Revy broadcast, Heavy Revy TV. And it's going to be our new broadcast. And we're going to be starting that up soon with regular times twice a week where we are going to be ministering to you. One will be a lot more open forum with questions and answers. Others will be teachings and lessons as we deconstruct, as we help people reconstruct and come into a place of balance and into a place of peace and rest through the revelation of Christ in you, the hope of glory. So I hope that some of these upcoming things are encouraging you and you're excited like I am. So reach out to us and let us know what's going on in your life, what the Father is doing in your life. We do shift sessions Mondays and Tuesdays. So please feel free to reach out online, call the number or text the number there and set up a session, and we'll help you walk through the process that we talked about today in dealing with triggers and lie-based thinking. Amen. Love you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.